This is the dichotomy of our species. On one end of the bell curve, people like Elon Musk and engineers and scientists pondering the hypotheticals, the theoreticals, and the practicals and the tangibles in order to create a better world. On the other, Stone Age savages cutting the heads off apostates and infidels to appease a sky ghost. And in the middle, teeming masses of grazers waiting for a glowing magic box to tell them what to be afraid of today. The opinions expressed by the Reverend are his own and no one else's on the planet. Not friends, not foes, not supporters, not detractors, certainly not employers. His own and no one else's. They are guaranteed thought crime in all jurisdictions. They are coming from the heart. They are guided by the mind. They are guaranteed to kick your ass. Boys and girls, saddle up to choke on that collective truth cock. It is time, once again, for the Sunday sermon. All my early arrivals on board, ready to pump up that energy, get that going, Little red desert, older, no wiser. Everybody in for the drum roll. Come on, people. Give it to me. Nice. We've got the usual suspects on board early, and I'm happy to see it. We got Emmy, we got Joel, we got the Sultan of Sarcasm himself, Mr. Joey. Oh my goodness, man. Wayne Sharp from the old school, because there's no school like the old school. We got Mike on board again this week. Chris Reyes. Cool, man. Always happy to see the old school guys, the return appearances, guys that made it out. And of course, always good to see some fresh faces too. I know a lot of you guys out there spreading the gospel for me. Got all my old school prophets of doom, my reverence rangers, my sinner sisters out there putting it out. Letting them know there is a weirdo, old-ass cripple that rants and raves every Sunday. Read it to you live on YouTube or off of Facebook again. We will get into the hows, the whys, the whats, and the wherefores of all that as we progress. Right now, I'm going to let this bumper music roll on a little bit, kind of get the energy up, see who's going to make it out. Once again, man, I just appreciate you guys being here. I appreciate all the support. It seems like we're getting new people every week, and the feed keeps getting bigger. And every time it gets to a certain set point, Zuckerberg comes along and knocks us off our pedestal, brings us back down a few notches, and we wind up just on YouTube again. But it's okay, man. We keep moving forward. Nothing's going to stop it. Nothing can stop an idea whose time has come. Or maybe just a weirdo old cripple with some opinions. I don't know, man. I don't want to get too full of myself here. Did I just hear ranter baits? You may or may not have, Emmy. That's cool. Very astute observation. I like it. In fact, I like it so much we're probably going to make it another hashtag here. Sunday sermon, second day of May 2021. Personal milestone for myself, but we're going to get into that. Start rolling this music down, I think. Get the banners up and running. Still kind of messing around with some of the StreamYard features, figuring out how to slide in subtle little subliminal suggestions, like that one. We're going to be dealing a lot more with the Antifa maggots here in a little bit. Once again, for those of you guys who are here for the very first time, or for those of you guys who just don't pay very close attention and missed it the first 100 times I've been over it, the bumper music is a track called Older No Wiser. Track from a band called Red Desert out of Minneapolis, Minnesota, or should I say the burned out remains of Minneapolis, Minnesota. But anyway, yeah. Red Desert is the band. The name of the track is Older No Wiser, and I feel like that's appropriate because I'm definitely getting older, and we'll see by the end of the hour if I'm getting wiser or not. So, a couple of days ago marked a personal milestone. The last time that I saw my home in Spokane, Washington, it has been a year as of just a couple of days ago. You guys that have been here for the sermon from the very beginning when it started off on just Facebook Live, mainly as a means for me to vent for an hour every week because it's cheaper than therapy. You guys have been on board. You've seen the entire evolution, not just of the program, but this mission that I've been on only in America, man. I'm going to count my blessings because, yeah, as of a couple of days ago, it's been a year since I left. Since I left the house on this mission, and it has now come to fruition. I'm up here in Iowa. I am in a crane seat. I am moving heavy steel. But y'all remember when it started out? I went on a wing and a prayer, and the word of a friend, one brother, Ryan Adam Jenkins. He called me up, and I was working as a support driver for the railroad at the time. He called me up and he said, "Hey, I know you've been wanting to learn the crane stuff. I'm out here on a wind farm in Nebraska. I need one word, yes or no." And it was a no-brainer. It was yes, and I went for it, and I never looked back. You can see down at the bottom over here, over this side, yes, this side of the screen, in the chat window, Brother Aaron Todd just showed up. He has been holding it down at the home, back in the spoke. He's also been holding down the kettlebell classes and things like that. Aaron, I have some good news for you. Message me after the program is over, but I may be seeing you here in a couple of weeks. So we'll get the details on that. Mike, yeah, well, it feels good to be in a seat. Yeah, so I left on a wing and a prayer, and I spent months out there in Nebraska doing nothing but taking them down, putting them up, taking them down, and moving them, because anybody can go to crane school and learn how to do this. And there are a lot of crane schools that are putting out students like that. I didn't want to be that guy. I wanted to learn it from the ground up, and it was some back-breaking stuff, but I learned a lot, and I learned the craft, and I got to be around some good people that schooled me, and it's been a fantastic journey. And now that journey, it hasn't come to an end. It's just hit its next evolution. So for all you guys and gals that have been out there, that have been watching the journey, that have been a part of the journey, that have supported me on this journey, and primarily for Brother Ryan, who opened the door for me to get on this journey. Hey, man, I thank you all, and I love you. So I wanted to get the happy personal stuff out of the way first, because we're going to be getting into some heavy stuff, which, of course, as you know, is completely out of character for me. Oh God, they see through me. They see through me. Okay, I'm sorry, a little Kennison moment. Yeah, so that's where I'm at. So we're up here in Iowa in the undisclosed location. By the way, I want to say hello to my upstairs neighbor, Chris. If you're watching, he's going to be first guy. I make friends out here, and just met this guy, Chris, who's staying in the same building, and we go out and have some heavy conversations out by the smoker unit. So it's cool. I'm really comfortable where I'm at, happy with the environment, happy to be here in Iowa, surrounded by good people. So there it is. And we move on. The things that I swore to cover, we're going to get to all of that. But again, Ryan didn't submit a proper, the rabbit hole of the week feature. First of all, another feature that we're incorporating here, and you guys saw that right at the beginning. We're going to do a meme of the week, a Reverend Bart meme of the week. And after we get done with the program, I'm going to have, because I'm currently in Facebook jail. Again, briefly, how it came to that. My buddy Moses Baxter, Hard Mo, holding it down for me again. Mo, I appreciate you. I can't thank you enough, man. Mo's been a good friend, man. I feel like I've known the guy all my life, and he's holding it down for me on Facebook. I got put in Facebook penitentiary again, this time through no fault of my own. I was trying to be good, but I reposted a blog that was originally posted by another dear friend of mine, Neil Ross. He's my official quote historian. You guys see him on my page all the time. I wanted to show off some of his work because I happen to feel like the man's a very skilled writer, and I wanted to share some of his material. Now, this particular blog was already posted on his page, is still posted on his page. They hit me on the fan page for posting it on the fan page, not even my personal page. They hit me and banned me for 30 days for violating community standards. When Neil found out about it, he reposted the blog with a header basically daring Zuckerberg to do something about it, and yet no bans. The original is still up. The repost is still up. The repost with him daring Zuckerberg to do something about it is still up. But the Reverend caught another 30-day ban. And remember, boys and girls, social media censorship is a myth and a right-wing talking point. Two-fisted fuck you on that one. So that's how I wound up in Facebook jail again, and that's why we are on YouTube and YouTube only once again this week. So in another 30 days, we'll be branching out to some other things. I'm learning my way around this StreamYard thing pretty well. I'm having a blast with that. Just different features and things to play with. I reposted the blog, and there was butthurt. Yeah, for all my Boondock Saints fans. Yeah, it's fun toys to play with. But let's get into what we all came here for, which was to hear this lunatic ranting and raving and what stuff we're going to cover. The feature that we started to incorporate, Brother Ryan likes to do some really esoteric internet rabbit holes and things like that. He didn't give me a really esoteric one this week, but he did mention that I should cover a particular news item. So we're going to honor that request. From the Daily Mail in the UK, where has the $850 million gone? Bill de Blasio's wife can't account for a staggering amount of taxpayer money that the New York mayor gave her for a mental health project. Now, far be it from me to suggest that New York City is one of the most corrupt cities in the United States, politically speaking. I think they're easily outdone by Chicago, but probably no one else. Maybe Los Angeles on a good day, depending on who's in the mayor's office and what kind of mandates for COVID and such they're trying to bring down on that particular day. But yes, Bill de Blasio, Mayor Bill de Blasio, Mr. Wilhelm. I'll let you go down that rabbit hole yourself. But yeah, de Blasio is not actually his name, boys and girls. It's Warren Wilhelm. How interesting with a strong German name like that he'd be trying to lock everything down and assume extra constitutional and extra judiciary powers. But yeah, de Blasio handed $850 million of taxpayer dollars over to his wife, allegedly for a mental health project that she was working on, and lo and behold, $850 million, poof, has gone missing. Just like that. So there's a little thing for you to do some research on if you want to dig deeper into political corruption. You can go down that rabbit hole. The $850 million missing dollars for the mental health project itself, and of course, Warren Wilhelm. Just Bill de Blasio, Warren Wilhelm. Look that up if you're not already aware of it. A lot of you are out here because my audience tends to be a little sharper than most, or at least pays closer attention to that sort of thing. So $850 million courtesy of Warren Wilhelm's wife. And that's going to segue us right into Cuomo, because not only is New York City one of the most corrupt cities, but New York State is certainly one of the most corrupt states when it comes to political malfeasance. Now, we all remember during the height of panic porn last year, subsequent to the pandemic, and as part and parcel of the pandemic and the propaganda that went along with that, they were holding up Mr. Cuomo. They were holding up Mayor Cuomo, or Governor Cuomo, rather. Sorry, got a little ahead of myself there. But they held up Governor Cuomo as the model of leadership, as the anti-Trump, in fact. Anything to get Orange Man, anything to make Orange Man look bad, anything to avoid giving Orange Man a win. Now, keep in mind, at the time, Orange Man had given New York City a full-bore United States Navy hospital ship, fully equipped and ready to take on patients. He had also loosened up federal funds for the Javits Center to be converted to a hospital, and gave them everything that they needed, including the respirators. Again, anything to get Orange Man, the propaganda wing of the Democratic Party that you know as CNN and MSNBC and pretty much any non-Fox media. They put the screws to Orange Man, saying New York City doesn't have enough respirators. New York City doesn't have enough respirators. Well, fundamentally, people are suckers for the truth. And the truth eventually came out that Cuomo had stuck a shit ton of respirators off to the side. Oh, well, those are my reserve respirators. So there never actually was a shortage, nor was there a shortage of hospital beds, with the Javits Center being converted and the U.S. Navy hospital ship parked right there in New York Harbor. However, that didn't stop Governor Cuomo from putting infected patients, COVID-infected patients, ones that had tested positive, back into nursing homes with the most vulnerable population across the board in this pandemic. In fact, I'm going to go out on a limb here because I'm already banned from Facebook. Let's see if YouTube hits me with a strike. But the only substantial demographic that was ever at any real risk for this virus, and that was the elderly. And Cuomo, rather than give Orange Man a win or even to say thank you, he said, no, we don't need the hospital ship. No, we don't need the Javits Center. And instead put tested positive infected patients into nursing homes, resulting in literally thousands of elderly deaths due to the virus. According to, let me go to the source here, Daily News, NewYorkDailyNews.com, we never blamed Governor Cuomo for COVID's death toll in New York. The virus has claimed more than 50,000 lives in New York State, including what we know now to be more than 15,500 deaths among nursing home residents. We accepted and accept Cuomo's aide's insistence that a March 25th, 2020 executive order requiring nursing homes, not giving them the option, but requiring nursing homes to accept new or returning patients regardless of whether they were COVID positive, was the well-intentioned act of a governor desperate to keep hospitals from being overwhelmed by the virus's surge as opposed to something nefarious. Now, they're sticking with this narrative in spite of all the facts that I've just laid out for you. They had a hospital ship parked in the harbor. They had the Javits Center available to them. They were never, ever, let me say that again for you guys way in the back or you guys that voted for Biden, they were never in any danger of having their hospitals overwhelmed. Ever, ever. Everything that they needed was placed right there at their disposal. And yet, the New York Daily News is continuing with the narrative that it was an oopsie. That when he signed this mandate, ordering, for all intents and purposes, ordering nursing homes to take in infected patients, that it was an oopsie, that it was just an oversight that cost 16,000 elderly lives. Let's just say it, 15,500, but it's climbing because every day something new comes out about this. And that was the bent of the entire article. The deception makes all the more galling the fact that a July 8th, 2020 Health Department report, which had been aggressively massaged by Cuomo's aides, included an obviously inaccurate data point stating that New York had a lower percentage of COVID nursing home deaths as a share of all COVID deaths than all but 4 other states. They're referring to it as the numbers got massaged. It was a lie. An outright fucking lie. And not only did Cuomo's office roll with it, but the propaganda arm picked it up and continued to run with it, holding up Cuomo as a model of leadership, as the anti-Trump. He won a fucking Emmy Award for his press conferences, for fuck's sake. Shameless fawning. Idolatry, says the Reverend. That's pagan idolatry. This shameless fawning. It's beyond absurd. It's nauseating. It's sickening. But they carried on with it. And not only did he win an Emmy, but he got a book deal out of it. I wonder how well that book is selling now that the facts are starting to come out. I would imagine it's probably still selling pretty fucking well because, again, the facts come out, but they get buried. The facts come out, but they get obfuscated. The facts come out, and your attention is rerouted. Quick, look over here, right-wing extremists. Whatever is necessary to continue the strength of the narrative. Unfortunately, fortunately for us, unfortunately for the propaganda ministers, the facts will find their way out. Voices, like the one you're listening to right now, they're working on shutting that down. And they do wherever they can. And they've had more than a modicum of success with it. If you want to look at where we're headed in the future, here in the United States with regard to big tech and its control over the flow of information. You need look no further than China and the way Google bent over backwards, literally, to accommodate their CCP masters, to deliberately set up their system over there to where it would make it possible for a dictatorial or an authoritarian government to outright restrict the flow of information, to say you don't get the right to do that. What we are seeing at work here is a light version of that, which is why I should take the time to point out, because I think it's a decent segue, not my best, certainly. But that was the nature of the blog post that got me kicked from Facebook. Again, Neil Ross, who is my friend and is a skilled writer and whose material you should check out, his post remains up. He remains not banned. I got kicked for a post. What was it about? It was about COVID, because they are carefully controlling the way this information gets out. Look no further than the article that I'm citing right now from the New York Daily News. It's trickling out. And even when the facts are irrefutable and completely out in the open, they still want to squeeze and control the narrative. The way that the mainstream press, the non-Fox at least mainstream press, and I have my own pleas before anybody lips off, because I can already see it. Oh yeah, another one of them damn Fox News walkers, damn hillbilly. Yeah, I'm not that fucking guy. I have my own set of problems with Fox News. The only qualifier I'll put to that is at least Fox News doesn't even try beyond the ad campaign of fair and balanced. That's been a running joke, at least since the Bush administration. They're fairly open with the fact that they are a conservative network. And if they're not, at least, Newsmax and OANN, One American News Network, they're very open with the fact that they are advocacy journalism. CNN still tries it. MSNBC is more or less open about it. CNN is still trying to masquerade as legitimate objective news. Nobody really buys that, except for the faithful, hashtag faithful. But yeah, anyway, I digress. Joseph Goebbels could not have dreamed of a more effective propaganda machine for the Third Reich than what we've clearly established here in an ostensibly democratic country, small d Democrat, of course, because we are we're a constitutional republic. So when I say Democrat, I say small d Democrat, but an ostensibly democratic country with a press that is that entirely controlled. I always misattribute this quote. Damn it, I always misattribute this quote. And if somebody can correct me on it, that would be great. Dmitry Orlov, cluborlov.com. He is a Russian who lived through the fall of the Soviet Union, and therefore one of the best guys to consult when you're looking at drawing parallels between collapses of great nations and the installation of or coming to fruition of dictatorial powers and their ultimate fall, thankfully. But he lived through the fall of the Soviet Union, and I always misattribute this quote to him. I don't know who really did it. If somebody out there can help me out. Whoever made the statement was this, that the one advantage that they had in the Soviet Union was that they knew that they lived under an authoritarian government. They knew that they had to question everything that came from the press, everything that came from Pravda, everything that came from any of the state-controlled press had to be questioned, because you knew. Now, you didn't question it out loud or you'd go missing, but they knew that everything that came from Pravda, everything that came from Soviet state-run media was bullshit. Was there to craft a narrative, was there to promote the party line of the government. The person who made this statement felt that we, on the other hand, were at a disadvantage because living in an ostensibly small d democratic nation, we are under the misguided impression that our press is not thoroughly controlled. We live under the misguided impression that the press is there to inform and not to insulate the power structure, to insulate the government, to insulate the deep state, for lack of a better word. Brief sidebar. I'm not going to go too tangential here. Brief sidebar. This so-called resistance, the social justice warriors, Woko Haram, the Woksheviks, they identify themselves as a resistance. This has got to be the first time in history, certainly in my adult life, that the so-called resistance happens to have 100% of their ideology completely in common with the existing power structure, both corporate and government. 100% in line. What the fuck exactly are these people resisting? I digress. The power of the Soviet press at the time to shape the narrative, to steer public behavior, if not public opinion. Because as I said, Soviet citizens who were not party members, right? The party members understood, and their ideology was already in line with the party, with the government. The people who were not members of the party understood that they were living under an authoritarian dictatorship. They wanted nothing more, most of them, than to be able to get out. So you couldn't really shape their opinion, but you could shape their behavior by laying down the narrative in a specific form or fashion. We have essentially the same behavior control mechanisms in effect in America right now, today. But again, as Orlov or whoever, please somebody give me the source of that quote, as they said, we still live under the misguided impression that our press is free and small d democratic. They are large D democratic. But yeah, that's what we're under right now. What do we know from back when we were kids? What did they always tell us about peer pressure? Peer pressure driving people into behaviors that they would not have otherwise participated in. What were we always told about that as kids? Particularly my generation, my Reagan era, war on drugs, evangelical Christian televangelist, heavy metal is the devil, all that. What were we told about peer pressure? It was a negative thing, was that we should strive to be strong in our individuality, in our way of thinking, in our way of behaving, to not be controlled by mob mentality. Hey man, you want to smoke a joint, dude? All the rest of your cool friends are doing it. I mean, come on, how many PSAs did we see back in the day? Come on. You guys that are in my age group, you know. You know. This is your brain. This is your brain on drugs. And yeah, right. This is your brain on drugs with a side of bacon. Anyway. Peer pressure. It was universally considered a negative thing, at least for us when I was a kid. if you weren't the kind of person who was going to smoke a joint or drink or, engage in premarital sex, all the, big devils of the time, listen to heavy metal music, whatever. If you weren't the kind of person who was going to do that on your own, you certainly, we were told, should not bow to peer pressure to motivate that behavior, to reinforce that behavior. Just because all the other cool kids are doing it doesn't mean that you ought to do it. If all your friends jumped off a bridge, I don't want to beat it to death, but I want to make sure the point is abundantly clear that we were schooled from a very young age. And again, that still exists pretty much today. We're told that peer pressure, we're told at least outwardly that peer pressure is bad when it steers people towards behaviors that they wouldn't ordinarily indulge in. That's what they tell us. But in classic Orwellian doublethink, we are also expected at the same time to not question anything that is coming from the proper authorities. Now, this was also common back when I was a kid. Don't bow to peer pressure from your friends, but always take the word of a doctor or a teacher or a police officer or the president. Any of these people who it was okay to, they can give you the orders. Your boss, for instance, whatever. Now we have gotten so fucking turned around that not only are we still, and again, it's just a gradual bending of the curve towards authoritarianism across the board, from the microcosm to the macrocosm, bending towards authoritarianism. Nobody told them to stop believing the authority figures, but now that's getting twisted up. Believe this authority figure, but not that one. Take the word of your doddering cadaver of a president, but not the cops. Cops are bad. Take the word of journalists as long as we tell you that they are the good journalists. But independent journalism, anything that differs from the mainstream narrative, that has to be shunned. But more importantly, and more effectively, for purposes of this discussion on behavior modification or behavior reinforcement, more to the point, peer pressure has become not only something to be succumbed to, but something that you're almost a blasphemer, an apostate. You remember from the meme at the beginning of the program, cutting the heads off of apostates so a piece of sky goes. They're cutting the figurative head off of citizens for varying from the narrative or varying from what's become an article of faith. Case in point, vaccine selfies. I have never in my adult life seen so many people so fucking eager to thump their chest as a virtue signal about how servile they are. I watched one of, or at least caught the highlight reel from one of Joe Biden's disastrous rallies this week. And we'll get more into what was discussed at that rally later. First, he had the embarrassing moment where he couldn't find his mask. Again, from last week's virtual climate summit, where all of the world leaders gathered together in a Zoom meeting And our president was the only one wearing a fucking mask. Do you realize how weak and ridiculous that looks? All for the proper optics. Look, we know. Let's say I've got it. Let's say I've got it, and worse. COVID, tuberculosis, airborne Marburg, hemorrhagic fever. Were you guys in any danger just now? But he kept the mask on. Why? Why? Because the signal that he's sending. All the cool kids still have their mask on. We know the man is vaccinated. We know the man is by himself in a room in front of a fucking camera. We know there's no one within 6 feet of him, and yet there he is with his fucking face diaper on, the only world leader participating in that conference to do that. It's beyond ridiculous. It's pathetic. But more pathetic is the motivation behind it. Look, our great leader still has his mask on and he's vaccinated. You don't want to differ from great leader, do you? And if that wasn't enough, all the people gathered at this Drive Up rally, standing outside their cars, 20 feet apart, masked up. Look at me, dear leader. I'm a good little servile puppet, not like those people. Not like those people denying the science. All the cool kids have their face diapers on. I'm one of the cool kids. I'm good. I'll do what I'm told. That's the message. I get it. You're vaccinated. Great. I have chosen not to accept the vaccine. If you have made the personal choice to take it because you, for whatever reasons of your own, maybe you are immunocompromised. Maybe, like my wife, you are a frontline healthcare worker. Maybe you're elderly. Maybe you have previous respiratory illness. Or maybe you just think, for whatever reason, better safe than sorry. Good on you. Vaya con Dios, Sparky. But to specifically generate social pressure to comply after compliance, I mean, perhaps once upon a time it may have been based in science, given the vectors of how this stuff spread at the time. Again, the official story has been all over the place from day one. But as his brother Joel just pointed out, yeah, they were just being good Germans. And Joey, the Sultan of Sarcasm, for you Pink Floyd fans. How can you have any pudding if you won't take your vaccine? If you don't take your vaccine, you can't have any pudding. Thanks for breaking that up, Joey, because we did need to laugh a little bit. I'm going to need a sip of my liquid enthusiasm and we'll jump back into it. But it outlived its usefulness. That's the point. Wherever we might have been early on in the pandemic with regard to masking, when there was no vaccine available, there may have been a time. It's open for dispute. Nothing bothers me more than the phrase settled science. Once upon a time, it was settled science that if you went faster than a certain rate of speed, your heart would stop. It was settled science that the world was flat. It was, science The scientific process is never settled. It's constantly open for new facts as they present themselves. And you have to change. You have to change with the new facts as they become available. Once you have said something is set in stone, and no matter how many facts beat it to death, it's settled science, and we can't dispute it. What the fuck, man? First off, science in this day and age is a dirty whore to be sold to the highest bidder, but we're not even going to get off on that. Big tobacco, big pharma, any of those things. But the peer pressure, the optics, what our president is doing, wearing his face diaper on a Zoom call with other world leaders to encourage all the rest of the little face diaper faithful to keep complying. Are you vaccinated? Yeah. Then why are you still wearing a fucking mask outside? 2 masks outside, even though you're fully vaccinated. Why are you wearing 2 masks at the kitchen table when you are fully vaccinated and the person sitting across the kitchen table from you is fully vaccinated? Me asking that question makes me a quote-unquote science denier. Why? Because of peer pressure. And peer pressure anchored in what? Magic F word. No, not that one. Fear. Always fear. Always fear. Fear over facts. The chance of a vaccinated person, even without social distancing, outside is so minuscule. You are literally, statistically more likely, feel free to fact check me on this, you are statistically more likely to win the Publishers Clearinghouse giveaway than you are as a vaccinated person to contract that virus from incidental contact with someone outside. And yet, 2 masks outside. Why? Because if they can push the fear, they can push the compliance. And that is what, in my opinion, it's always been about. Anyone who denies that that case can be made at this point is just fundamentally fucking dishonest. It's always been about control. You push the fear, you gain the control. And what better way to influence people's behavior than that need for acceptance? Getting back to peer pressure. All the cool kids are wearing their masks. All the cool kids got their vaccine. What's wrong with you? Don't you want to be one of the cool kids? I went looking on Google. I entered in the search bar, I entered vaccine selfies dumb. That is another trend that I've noticed. Again, besides Biden at his rallies and all the people outside still fucking masking up for no good goddamn reason. And journalists, alleged journalists like Joy Reid, finding ways and reasons to push that narrative. How do I justify that to somebody? I'm still wearing 2 masks when I go running in the morning outside, and you're a doctor. Tell me how I can justify that to people. She wasn't asking that question in the sense of, please explain to me, because I think this makes me look like a fucking idiot. She was asking in terms of, I want to be a good German. I want to be compliant. I want to be one of the cool kids. But the facts are telling me that I'm being ridiculous by wearing 2 masks outside after I've been vaccinated. So please, doctor, tell me how I explain to people. Tell me how I get past their facts that shoot down the narrative. But I'm the fucking science denier. Okay. Anyway, I went looking in the search bar on Google. Vaccine selfies dumb. Because again, I think that trend is fucking ridiculous. Look at me, I got my jab. Yeah, Sparky, that's good. We see ya. We see ya. Good German. Way to follow the Fuhrer, the leader. Great job, Sparky. People are getting tattoos with the Johnson & Johnson or the Pfizer logo. Tattoos to mark someone as thinking correctly and being properly servile to the government. Wow, what could go wrong? I thought I had to be a joke, but no, I did the homework. And then just on a goof in the vaccine selfies. Look at me, I got my jab. Posing with a Band-Aid. Getting the little, whatever that circle thing is they put around your Facebook profile pic. Look at me, I'm a good little servile idiot. Because that's what it comes down to. That's why I feel like these selfies are fucking dumb. Vaccine because you legitimately feel like you're at risk, then get the fucking vaccine. Take the shot, shut the fuck up about it. If your concern is legitimately about your health. That's not what it's about. Not when you're taking selfies with your little Band-Aid. Not when you're getting tattoos of pharmaceutical company logos. It's not about health at that point. It's about you showing off. What are you showing off? That you can follow orders. That's it. I went looking. Vaccine selfies dumb. And the first thing that it pulled up is right here in this tab in front of me right now from the Washington Post. You know the Washington Post. Democracy dies in darkness. Remember those guys? Democracy dies in their fucking editing bay. They don't give a damn about democracy or transparency in spite of all their bluster during the term of Orange Man. They give a damn about that. First article that popped up, Washington Post, in praise of vaccine selfies. They aren't narcissistic. They're a declaration of hope. Declaration of hope. Lady in here with her N95 mask on, and another one, a man celebrates by posting a picture of himself sitting in his car. An "I got vaccinated" sticker clearly visible on the lapel of his pea coat. I don't care. I don't care that you got vaccinated any more than you should care that I haven't. It's none of your goddamn business. But with the fear being pushed, they have these cult members, because that's what it is at this point, the cult of fear, the cult of Father Fauci. And in spite of the facts, even Vox now, this new tab that I've just pulled up in front of me, what went wrong with the media's coronavirus coverage? Lamenting all of the ways that they got it wrong. This from Vox, who was one of the lead sources pushing the fear in the first place and getting it wrong. But now it's revisionist history. What do you have to fear? I don't know. How about the time that Bayer sold HIV-infected protein in foreign countries? Blood clotting agents that were infected with HIV. They sold it here in the States. And then when they could no longer sell them here in the States, they sold them in foreign countries for another 2 years rather than throw away the stocks. Feel free to look that up. Here's your search term: Bayer, the aspirin guys, and also first producers of pharmaceutical heroin. Look that up as well, since we're going down rabbit holes. Bayer division, Bayer division, knowingly sold HIV-infected protein. Look that up. It's a tinfoil hat conspiracy from those crazy right-wing extremists at the London Guardian. As left-leaning as they are, they have to come out and admit it. But these vaccine companies are insulated from lawsuits. Here's another one worth looking up: top 10 medical cover-ups. Look that one up, or any of the other things. But you push the fear. Why? Because if you push the fear, you can steer the mob. And the mob has never been more important than it is right now in the midst of what is, I started to say arguably, but at this point there's no argument, unquestionably, the single biggest, the single most egregious political power grab in the history of the United States. The single most egregious example of one party going for broke because they know they have a limited window. You steer the mob with fear. You steer the mob with peer pressure. Don't you want to be one of the cool kids and get the vaccine? Don't you want to be one of the cool kids? Hey, you certainly don't want to be one of those right-wing extremists. Fear, fear, fear. And that's one sort of mob behavior. Just one sort of mob behavior. That one's the easy one. But when you gin people up into a frenzy with that fear, the fear of right-wing extremism, still pushing this January 6th thing, which was heinous. Let's not engage in any equivocation there. They never should have breached the grounds. Even the ones who were let in by Capitol Police, they never should have gone inside. I certainly wouldn't have. But our president called this this week in his, God, so painful address to a joint session of Congress, which he finally got around to just before May. Most of the presidents, late January, early February, not our cadaver in chief. In the midst of that, he said that was the single greatest blow to our democracy, or the single greatest attack on our democracy since the Civil War. Why that choice of words specifically? Not his words, his speechwriter's words. Why? Civil War. We can draw that into racism. We can draw that into white supremacy. We can tie white supremacists into these other groups. You don't think that's working? I'm going to get some facts here in a minute that are going to surprise you. You have the maggot mob. May Day, important holiday for the labor movement, which once upon a time was a positive thing, and now has disintegrated into outright Bolshevism. But predictably, on May Day, this mob, driven by fear, this resistance that just happens to have the exact same ideology as the sitting president and all of corporate America at this point, because all of corporate America, at least publicly, is supporting Black Lives Matter, and Antifa are riding on their coattails. Don't fucking kid yourselves, people. Do not kid yourselves. Antifa are riding right on those BLM coattails, because BLM, as we discussed last week, Black Lives Matter, the factual statement, and Black Lives Matter, the extortion racket that goes along with that factual statement is still a much easier sell than outright violent revolutionary Bolshevism. the maggot mob, the Bolsheviks, Boko Haram. But predictably, they took advantage of May Day to push their mostly peaceful protest. Again, anyone still saying that at this point, damn you for a liar and a coward. They confronted federal officers at the ICE facility. This was 2 days after Biden, in that disastrous drive-up rally, protesters were screaming at him, shut down ICE, and he says, I'm working on it. Give me another 5 days. Look that up. He said it. And immediately afterward, on May the 1st, on May Day, Antifa is outside an ICE facility in Portland and in Seattle. Violent attacks, throwing the soup cans, doing their stuff with the fireworks. We've seen it all before. The Portland Police Bureau had to run a correction on their first report. Correction, May Day peaceful afternoon. May Day peaceful protest was the original. Correction, May Day peaceful afternoon. Night turns into riots. 6 arrests, including one for menacing officers with a knife. A mostly peaceful knife, I'm sure. Again, May Day, all the way back to 1886, if memory serves. But yeah, May the 1st, 1880. I got old guy brain. I'm slipping. I'm going to go with 1886. Fact check me. But it was a universal strike, like across the board. People from all trades, factory labor, craftsmen, whatever, walk the fuck off their jobs. The labor movement from the early days on have done very, very important work. We have weekends because of them. We have overtime pay because of them. We have kids not being allowed to work around heavy machinery because of the labor movement. They did some very, very important shit. You can't take away what they gave us because of what they've become. But right now, we have to deal with what they've become and how other groups are capitalizing on that. One of the Portland News Network affiliates. May Day has morphed from celebration of workers' rights to violence, says historian. And he goes on at length about that. Police declare a riot in downtown Portland on May Day. May Day 2021, more than a dozen arrested during Seattle demonstrations. And keep in mind, these Portland and Seattle demonstrations, Portland in particular, they barricaded people inside a federal building and set it on fire. If Derek Chauvin's knee in resisting suspects or even non-resisting suspects' back is murder, I submit to you that locking a building up and barricading it and then setting it on fire, knowing that there are people inside, should at least qualify as attempted murder. Wouldn't you agree? But let's ignore that because they're mostly peaceful. This is a mob being driven by fear, and because circle of life, they in turn are using that fear to drive people's behavior. And I'm going to bring it home. I'm going to bring it back to Chauvin. I'm going to bring it back to the Chauvin trial. There's a reason I mentioned that. But before we get to that, do we remember little timid Ted Wheeler, mayor of Portland? Do we remember him from last summer when the maggot mob, Antifa, were out in force? And the maggot mob were laying siege to a federal courthouse downtown. And the orange man, we can't give him a win. He wanted to go in and shut it down. And what did Mayor Ted do? Mayor Ted said, no, we're standing proudly with these mostly peaceful protesters. And guess what happened to Ted Wheeler? He went out there and marched with them. And he got publicly excoriated. They got up in his face and were making threats. They threw stuff at him. And then just a couple of weeks after that, they busted in the windows of the ground floor of the high-rise complex that Mayor Ted Wheeler lived in and set the place on fucking fire. Because, Teddy, as you have found out, there is no appeasing the mob. And he thought that if he just went along with it, first of all, he is a leftist. So he did at least have some common ground with these Antifa maggots, and certainly wouldn't want to be thought of as opposing something as easily promotable, something as obvious and common sense as Black Lives Matter. Again, Black Lives Matter, the factual statement. Black Lives Matter, the extortion racket. Ted couldn't draw the difference. And he also couldn't be bothered to realize that Antifa was riding BLM's coattails because, as he insisted, and as we heard our now cadaver-in-chief insisted during the debates, Antifa isn't an organization. Antifa isn't real. They're not an organization. They're an idea. And Antifa just means anti-fascist. So if you don't support every single article of faith that they do, that means you must be a fascist. How delightfully fucking convenient. I digress. Ted Wheeler, he got to feel it. They chased him out of downtown the night of the demonstration, the mostly peaceful demonstration where buildings were set on fire and police officers were assaulted, mostly peacefully. They chased him out of downtown that night. Then they chased him out of his apartment building when they set the fucking place on fire scarcely a week later. And then finally, after the election, after Orange Man go bye-bye, little timid Teddy finally tried to puff up his chest and be terrible, Teddy. Me, I'm tough. I really am. Me. Vegan fuck. Sorry, getting a little sidetracked, getting a little emotional. Teddy found out the fucking hard way. And just this week, the mob pushing fear. The mob pushing fear to influence behavior. I'm going to bring this all home. Stay with me. Here's a headline from Oregon Live. The Oregonian Portland police investigate veiled death threat. Again, even now, they're sticking with the mostly peaceful narrative. Portland police investigate veiled death threat against Mayor Ted Wheeler following calls to crack down on destructive demonstrators. He still couldn't call them rioters. He still couldn't call the demonstrations riots. They were destructive demonstrators, not violent rioters, destructive demonstrators. But even that was too much for Antifa to stomach. And I'm going to try to find the exact quote. You can find the video if you look it up. I think they have the video available on OregonLive.com. But an Antifa maggot masked up in full black bloc. And the quote is, "Blood is already on your hands, Ted. The next time, it may just be your own." But say it with me, kids. Say it with me. Antifa isn't an organization. They're an idea. And all their demonstrations are mostly peaceful. See, the only people out there making death threats are those dangerous right-wing extremists. And this is how they influence behavior. They push their own brand of fear because they've seen that fear works better than voting or persuasion. They scare the shit out of people into doing what the fuck they're told and then insist that what they did didn't have any influence. And it's gotten down to the most absurd. Look, let me tell you what happened this week on Jeopardy. A really intelligent cat who had won some big Jeopardy tournament 3 times said, "Hey, they put the camera on him and they said, hey, he's a 3-time winner." He said, yeah, three-time winner. You know where this is going, don't you? 3%er. Of course, 3%er, the left will tell you, is a W and a P for white power. Odd. So when I close my program and give a little shout to the 3%ers, or maybe I'm just a fucking Dale Earnhardt fan, huh? But yeah, the maggot mob put social pressure on other Jeopardy champions. They put the push on. And they got bombarded with letters demanding an apology for holding up the universal symbol for OK. That's where we're at now. But they're going to tell you with a straight face that fear has no place in their motivation, that pushing that fear to make you act the way they tell you to, that's certainly not their motivation. We're down to influencing Jeopardy now. Bad head symbol. Bad hand symbol. And the funniest part of the whole thing is that this thing here, the whole lie, there's just no other way to put it. I'm trying to parse my words here. But the whole lie that the universal symbol for OK that we've used for fucking centuries is suddenly a white power symbol. You know where it started out? And the New York Times, right here in this tab, even had to acknowledge it. The origin of that started up on fucking 4chan back in 2017. They wanted to illustrate the absurdity of the fear that leftists had pushed. And they said, what better way? Here's what we're going to do. These people get worked up into a fucking, they're afraid. There's white supremacists under every bed. Everything is white supremacy. Everything is racism. Nazis, fascism, orange man bad. They are so fucking afraid and so hair triggered. I'm going to show you how far we can take it. And this group of people on 4chan got together and started this internet rumor, circulated through Reddit. I don't spend a lot of time on Reddit or 4chan, so I'm kind of talking sideways out my ass here. But the overarching project was that they were going to start this internet rumor on the underground, spread it through their different channels and blogs and stuff, was that the OK symbol had been secretly co-opted by white supremacists, and that when they held this up, this was a W and this was a P for white power. And damned if the social justice warriors didn't take it and fucking run with it. And all of a sudden, practically overnight, inside the space of a couple of months, it was no longer okay to say that something's okay. To hold three fingers up for Dale on the third lap of every NASCAR race. And of course, there'll be some bonehead out there, well, we already knew that NASCAR fans were fucking Klansmen. Go fuck yourself. Doing like I do, to hold it up in solidarity with the 3%ers. That's no longer okay. To be in solidarity with 3%ers, that's no longer okay. They're a dangerous right-wing extremist organization, yada, yada, yada. And this is a white power symbol. Go fuck yourself. So, if this mob can drive an entire population into changing their behavior for something as basic and simple and harmless as the OK symbol, if fear of the mob's repercussions to be inflicted can make perfectly otherwise reasonable, otherwise intelligent people stop using the symbol for okay because they're afraid of the vengeance that might be wrought upon them socially for being a racist? Does it not stand to reason that they could further be influenced into a particular verdict in a particular court case? Does it not stand to reason that any court in the United States of America could be influenced to rule a particular way, let's say the correct way, if there was fear in their hearts that if they did not, we would get to see the same level of violence and possibly even worse than what we all were forced to endure last summer? And I swear, I already hear you, motherfucker. I hear you. You're 90% peaceful. I will slap the fucking taste out of your mouth. I don't have any sense of humor about this shit anymore, man. I don't want to hear that they were 90% peaceful. Because the 10% that wasn't had entire fucking cities in fear, burned out entire city blocks, killed police officers, caused literally billions of dollars in damage. So don't talk to me about the mostly peaceful protests. But getting back to the important bit, does it not stand to reason that in order to avoid that, a replay, a rerun of the violence of last summer, that people might be influenced to make certain decisions? A jury in Minneapolis, perhaps? A very, very, very high federal court refusing to even entertain certain cases regardless of the evidence because they didn't want to replay, they didn't want a repeat performance? Does it not stand to reason that an entire summer and that level of violence could influence people? If we can already, if we can make saying something's okay, if we can influence individuals to stop using the symbol for okay, you don't think it stands to reason that it could influence things much larger than that? And you don't think that that might actually be the intention? Because here's what I'm going to close with. The left is already on a power grab. The left is already flexing their muscle and getting what they can while they can, and they will stop at nothing to do it. And it came out this week that if the fear, and I don't care how you feel about what Chauvin did, I believe that Derek Chauvin is guilty of manslaughter. I don't believe that they met the burden of proof for murder, but I wasn't on the jury. Manslaughter, certainly, absolutely, and without equivocation. I will say that, in my opinion, Derek Chauvin is guilty of manslaughter. They did not meet the burden of proof for murder. I want to be abundantly clear of where I am on this and where I am not. But if you don't think it's possible that the fear had an influence on that jury, I don't think we're living on the same planet. But here's how strongly they felt about getting their way. They were going to get their way one way or the other. They were going to make sure to avoid a repeat performance, and they were going to use the power of the federal government to do it. The Department of Justice planned to arrest Derek Chauvin in court and charge him with civil rights violations if he was acquitted of the murder. Now, if you don't think that is both influenced by fear of the mob and, more to the point, something that should scare the hell out of you, The Minnesota U.S. Attorney's Office would have charged Chauvin by criminal complaint so authorities could arrest him immediately and then seek a grand jury indictment afterwards. This was going to be the optics. This was going to be the theatrics. Had the jury come to the wrong decision, the incorrect conclusion, had they not been influenced by that fear and they acquitted him, the federal government was going to immediately, before he could get up from the table, they were going to put him in cuffs, charge him with civil rights violations, and then seek an indictment later. Now, a lot of people say, well, that's double jeopardy. No, technically it's not. They're charging him with a different violation based on the same incident. They're not charging him with murder again. But I want you to ponder that. Not only potentially, and a couple of alternate jurors that heard all of the testimony have admitted as much now. We went over that last week, that they were intimidated by the thoughts of what might happen if he were acquitted. If that wasn't enough, the federal government was ready to use its power to take a man who, had it rolled that way, would have just been found innocent by a jury of his peers in a legitimate court proceeding. What did the federal government have to be afraid of? Complicated spot to be in if you're Joe Biden, because you can't give a pass to them for the entire summer of 2020, and then suddenly in 2021, if the riots kick off again, now you got to crack down. You wouldn't want to look like Orange Guy, would you? Their political goals and their political ambitions for the left are exactly the same. Antifa, the maggot mob, they're very, very useful idiots. They are the shock troops. They are the brown shirts for where this is all going. Remember, we don't do black pills around here. We're not gonna let that bum us out. I think I want to take totally the opposite tack. I want you guys to reach down deep. I want you to look at exactly what it is that they're pushing, that fear. They want you afraid. They want juries afraid. They want governments afraid. Public figures, cops, do what you're told. If the government came out and said that, go fuck yourself. Government sells it with peer pressure, still based on fear. Still got motherfuckers wearing 2 masks outside that have been vaccinated, posting your selfies. Sparky. The government is driving fear one way. The mob is driving fear the other way, trying to scare officials, trying to scare governments, trying to scare juries, trying to scare regular, ordinary citizens. The way that we fight that is not to fucking fold. The way that you fight that on a personal level is to find your own strength. The way that you fight that is Coach Tony Blauer. You guys that have been around, you know I'm involved in combatives as an instructor, certified instructor under Coach Tony Blauer and his Spear system. Not no, N-O fear. No, K-N-O-W fear. Know it. See how it operates, acknowledge it, but don't give in to that fear. Be strong enough to face it head on and recognize it for what it is. Don't be afraid to call it what it is. Don't be afraid to get your body, your heart, and your mind strong for the fight. When they come to you with do what you're told or Simple 3-word response. Knuckle up, bitch. I am the Reverend. That is the gospel. We are, wow, we're about 20 minutes over time. I appreciate you guys staying with me through all of that. There's a lot to get off my chest, a lot of stuff to cover, man. I hope that the words that I brought to the table, I hope that the knowledge that I'm sharing, I hope that the approach has in some way affected you positively, whether it's your worldview or whether it's your fitness regimen or whether it's your need to build your vocabulary, whatever the fuck I may have done that helped make your life a better place in any small way. If you want to throw, I'm going to pass around that digital collection plate like I do every Sunday. I'm on PayPal, I'm on Venmo, I'm on Cash App, I'm on Facebook Pay, I'm on all of that stuff. So if you guys want to throw me some coin, that'd be great. It's a labor of love regardless. I don't care. And if you can't, I totally dig that too. But here's what you can do for me, regardless of where your finances may be at any given moment. You can spread that word. You can spread that gospel. Gonna go out with a little clutch. Fortunate Son, courtesy of Ryan Adam Jenkins. Thanks again, brother, for every door you open for me. But you guys can get out there and spread that gospel. You can tell people about the program. You can find like minds and kindred spirits and turn them on to the program. Say, hey, man, we got this weird fat-ass old cripple that rants and raves for an hour every Sunday. You might want to check it out. Got some interesting ideas, whatever. But barring that, we already know the 3 prime directives, guys. Feel free to say it with me, man. I want to drive these home. The most important things, the big 3, be the signal in a world full of noise. Be the light in a world full of darkness, and be that strength in a world full of weakness, a world full of fear. It doesn't have to be you. It ain't me. It doesn't have to be that way, man. Be strong. Be strong enough to better yourself. Be strong enough not to buckle, not to bend in the face of people who tell you that you have to be afraid. For all the people that tell you that you can't, for all the people that tell you you shouldn't, for all the people that tell you you better not, two-fisted, go fuck yourself. Who runs me? Me. Who runs Barntown? Mr. Russell runs Barntown. Who runs Planet Bart? Bart runs Planet Bart. Make your own world a better place. The world can be as fucked up as it ever needs to be. Your world only has to be as fucked up as you decide to let it. I am the Reverend. That is the gospel. I love you guys. Peace. See you next Sunday. Make it a better week. Make it a better life. Stay strong. See you next Sunday.